Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamie Knox. I'm a school adjustment counselor for the Amherst Regional Public Schools at Summit Academy. We are joined today with some panelists who in a moment will introduce themselves and are going to be talking about building a solid college list. So the kind of process for today, all of our panelists will introduce themselves. They'll each take a few minutes to check in and share their thoughts about this process. I will be keeping an eye on the comment section and chat section just to see what's coming up. And we'll give those questions to our panelists to answer. So good afternoon, everybody. And Dale, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
Great, thank you. My name is Dale Niemer. I'm Associate Director of Admissions at Skidmore College in Saratoga Springs, New York.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daisy Oganedo. I'm an Assistant Director of Admissions with the University of Massachusetts Lowell.
Hi, everyone. My name is Abby Stevens. I use she, her pronouns, and I am an Assistant Director as well at the University of Vermont. Thanks for having us.
Great, and hello folks, my name is Rachel Tamponi, Associate Director of Admission and International Recruitment at Merrimack College over in North Andover, Mass.
Great, so I'm going to start and talking about ways you can start building your list of colleges. And one of the ways I think you can start is even looking in your local area. You are very lucky in that you live smack in the middle of some of the best colleges in this country, but there's also a range of colleges out there and everyone needs to make some decisions early on. Do you want large, small, rural, urban, etc.? But we'll get there later. But I think now in the time of COVID, things have changed a little bit, and I know it is harder to get onto college campuses. But certainly if you're out for a Sunday drive or visiting a relative, it's always nice to drive through a campus and just check it out and just see what appeals to you. If you know students that attend some of the colleges that you're interested in, I think that's a great way to find out what they like about that school and maybe their opinions as well. Websites are a really important way to learn a lot more. And one thing about the website now is I think all of us on this panel would agree that our colleges are doing everything we can to build an important, informative website. So you can find out a lot about our campus culture, the majors, the size of the classes, and also extracurricular life as well. We all know there's lots of guidebooks out there. I think I always reference them with read them, look through them, and strain and sift a little bit of what you read, but there is some really good information in the guidebooks. With COVID, I don't know that all schools are doing college fairs anymore, but hopefully we'll go back to those soon. And I think that's one of the early best steps you can do is going to different tables to learn about different colleges, their strengths, what they're about, but also making those decisions of, do I want a large university, a liberal arts college, a small college, a community college, a trade school, and just kind of realizing what all those opportunities mean. As you can, in the fall, typically all of us would be on the road visiting your high school. Unfortunately, this year that's not happening. Hopefully next year it will be. So definitely when colleges are coming to visit your high school, you'll get to go and visit some of the counselors that come and ask the important questions you need to know. Word of mouth, parents, your guidance counselors are probably the best resource out there. They know many colleges, they know us well, and they also can use tools like Naviance to tell you if you are in the ballpark. Your teachers are also a great reference. But before I finish, as you're building your list, you're the expert in your college search and you're the expert of what you need and what your educational goals are. And it's great to take advice, but trust your heart too. I think I'll stop there and then come back and let somebody else continue for a moment.
Oh, I think you're...
Sorry. What I always advise students when they're planning on their college list is to make it a game. First things first is to look up schools that actually have your major. So what I suggest is get a sheet, a Google sheet, whatever, docs, use Google and just look up all the schools that you can find that have your major. Start writing as many of them down. And then at that point, take like 10 minutes to do all of that. You'll probably find quite a few different schools. What then I suggest after is to start figuring out which schools fit best for you. The colleges are always talking about fit and what student fits best, but you also have to find the school that fits for you. So not only does it have your major, but is it private? Is that what you're looking for? Is it public? Is it a community college? Or is it a specialty school for trade? Anything specific to like HBCUs or Latino serving institutions, and then try to figure it out from there. Then narrow it down even further. Does it have the clubs that you're looking for? Is it accredited in certain programs that you're interested in? And then from there, your list starts to get smaller and smaller. Another thing I always tell the students, because I did have a group of students who played this activity, and they were writing down lists of schools that didn't exist anymore or had merged and changed their name. So make sure you're actually checking when you're doing all of that to make sure that those schools are still around. Some really helpful website to do all of this. College Board is very helpful. Naviance is great too. I know a lot of students have access to that. Then we've got College Greenlight, which helps students find different colleges as well as scholarships. Then there's FastWebs, which is also good for scholarships as well as searching. Google is super easy. And as Dale mentioned before, using the school's websites. Just utilize as many tools as possible to make this not just a difficult, process for you. Make it as fun as you can. Play it with other friends that are looking to get into college. Whoever has the most on their list that are accurate, give yourselves a prize or something like that. But there's definitely a way to make this interactive and also give you the opportunity to find exactly what you're looking for, because no one wants to end up at a school and they realize, hey, this is not what I was looking for. So a lot of research that you do beforehand is going to save you so much stress in the long run. And I'm going to pass it on to someone else now.
Awesome. Thank you. I think I'm up. Those were both such good pieces of advice. I love the game and the fit. And so I would echo both of those general statements. I love the idea of going to visit your local college, even if it's not on your list, going to check it out. But before this panel, I actually got some help from some experts, which I will put in the chat after, but it's a video of a couple of our current students giving honest college advice and how they kind of felt what they wanted to know in their search process. And I loved watching the video, and I will put it in the chat. And throughout, they all had little different nuggets of wisdom that I thought were great and spot on, but they all echoed the same statement that this is your choice. It's up to you and your family. What is the best fit? And just like Daisy said, you hear the word fit so much, and what does that mean? So for example, I think a place where students might get caught up is size. Do you want a big size or a small size? What does that actually mean? For students coming from a smaller high school setting, maybe they think, okay, I've had a small high school. I need to stick with it and have a small college. Or maybe you come from a small high school and you're like, no way, I'm done with that. I want a huge school. That will be great for me. So there's so many different sizes. And I think it's a great question to ask when you go to these different visits, whether they're virtual or in person. What's your class schedule like right now? What kind of classes are you taking? Because the student to faculty ratio at all these schools are going to look pretty similar after a while. So really just hearing anecdotally from students, I think, about, do you have a mix of classes? Are all of your classes very small? Is a good way to get to know it. And then their one piece of advice I think is helpful. So, we all know what size means, large and small, but how does that feel for you? And what does that mean, I think is important. I think I will go ahead and stop there, and excited to hear some questions. Thanks.
Awesome. So I can jump in. I think my colleagues from all of the other schools have done a great job of explaining how you go about building the actual list. So kind of once you get to that point, you've done your research, you've narrowed down by major, by location, by extracurriculars, athletics, religious affiliation, size. There's a lot of things to consider. So you have this list now narrowed down considerably, but now you have to think of yourself and your own academic profile and who you are as a student and where you may fit in these institutions. So there are different buzzwords that people will throw around, like reach schools and target and likely and safety schools. But really just thinking about it, it's a way to make sure you're giving yourself enough options, the right options. It's always good to have some reaches, some things that are aspirational. But I think the biggest part about this list is, the safety schools or those match schools, target schools. Those are schools that you should find yourself very happy at, and that would be very lucky to have you. So, don't put all of your eggs in this one or two reach baskets, because there are so many institutions where you can find a fit. So just kind of thinking of that. So things that you'll want to keep in mind when kind of planning your lists and what your applications are going to look like. You're going to want to keep in mind, the school's acceptance rate, what their average GPA may be. Do they require test scores, and what are those averages? Just to kind of look at your own academic profile and see how that's in line with what's typical for the school. So that's kind of how you'll curate that list of, okay, well, my GPA is a little bit below this, but I like all they have to offer. I'm going to put my application out there and, see what happens. Or this school, is right on par with my GPA. That's what I'm going to apply to. I would be very, very happy if I was able to get in and go there. So it's just good to really give yourself options. You don't have to break any world records for how many schools you apply to. A healthy list could be anywhere from 5 to up to, 15. There's no magic number, but you do want to give yourself options and flexibility. A few other things that weren't mentioned that I wanted to just kind of speak upon and give you some ideas. Maybe you have classmates that you played sports with, did extracurriculars with, that went on to some schools you might be considering that are maybe freshmen or sophomores now. Can you reach out to them in your network and see what their experiences are like? There's nothing better than, a current student or someone to give you a little bit of advice. Another thing that I just like to point out in kind of making these considerations is affordability and cost. So first thing, if you're going to be applying to a lot of schools, do you need a fee waiver? Do schools have fee waivers that they can help make the application cost more manageable for you? You can always reach out to an admission counselor to ask those questions. Also, just thinking about cost, affordability. I work at a private institution, so you'll see a sticker price, but no student's going to pay that. So every school legally does have to have a net price calculator available on their financial aid website. So that is just some self-reported information about family financials, as well as your own academic history, that can kind of spit out a more accurate cost of just what you can expect to pay. So that's kind of another thing, parents, families, students, you might want to take into consideration in kind of building these lists, to also have options that might be attainable as far as both financially as well as fit. So those are just some other options that I wanted to put out there. And like everyone else said, utilize the websites, utilize the virtual visits. Schools are doing some amazing things online now, so I know travel is difficult, but utilize those things that are out there.
So I'm going to hop in here with a slightly different perspective. I come from Landmark College in Putney, Vermont, a 4-year private institution exclusively for students who learn differently. Students who may have dyslexia, ADHD, maybe on the autism spectrum. So I'm going to take the conversation about building your list towards the 1 in 5 students that the National Center for Learning Disabilities say have some kind of learning difference. Now, everything that the other panelists said also applies to you, and it's all wonderful advice that all of you have given. But let's take a look at, as a foundation, some of the statistics. Of the students who receive accommodations and support in high school, only 17% go on to access the resources that are available to them in college. And then I think about, how does that impact outcomes? I was really surprised to learn that nationwide, of all students trying to earn a bachelor's degree, only 50-some% succeed. And the odds go down if you're a student with learning differences. Only about 33 or 34% of the students succeed in earning the degree that they're after. And I tell you this not to be discouraging, but to tell you that you can take charge of the situation. You can change the odds by accessing and utilizing the supports that are available in colleges today. So what kinds of support are available? The landscape's somewhat different than it is for you in high school. I break it into 4 different kinds of levels of support. At the base of this triangle, if you can picture it, are the 4,300 or so institutions of higher ed throughout the country, all of whom are required by law to provide accommodations that give equal access to students with disabilities. Now, those accommodations may vary greatly from institution to institution, and how easy or hard they are to access can vary as well. A smaller subset of these 4,300 colleges offer some kind of support services in addition to accommodations. So that can be like executive function coaching, math and writing labs. What's important to know is that studies have shown that for every hour of these kinds of services, a student utilizes, their GPA increases. Again, a smaller subset of colleges are traditional colleges that within them have structured programs of support. So they may be programs aimed at a particular learning difference like ADHD or autism. They may be more broad-based, but they are comprehensive programs of support that usually come with additional fees for the kinds of supports that you access. And finally, at the very top of this triangle, a very small group of schools and post-secondary programs are exclusively for students who learn differently. So Landmark is one of the 2 colleges in that category. The other is Beacon, and then there are various other post-secondary programs. So how do you incorporate that information into building your college list? I think the first thing to be aware of is what are the services and supports that you're receiving currently in school, and assume that you are going to need the same supports in order to be successful. College isn't easier than high school. It's more rigorous, both in terms of the academic demands and the executive functioning skills that it requires to be successful. So be aware of what you receive now, and then look at those various kinds of support in colleges and find the one that will best match the services that you need to best ensure your success.
Fern, thank you so much. So this has been so lovely to hear all of you. We have quite a number of viewers right now. And we do have one question that came through. So is the profile of a college in a directory published this year likely reflect the reality 2 years from now? May some schools be very different post-COVID? Sure, go ahead, Dale.
I think what I would do is I would look at that data, and interviews are recommended at many schools, or feel free to just call the college office and ask them if it's still current. I think this year some of the differences you'll see is many of us are going test optional. Some of us who always looked very closely at demonstrated interest understand that can't really happen this year. We have families usually coming right now from all over the country, international families, and it's limited now. So I would feel free to call a college and ask them directly, like, is your profile changing? But I think best of all, or most of all this year that I'm hearing from my school and other colleges is we're all going to be very flexible because of the circumstances right now. So that's what I'm hearing. And I just wanted to mention one thing. I don't know if we gave a real definition, but as I understand it, the dream college is a place that it might be challenging for you to get into. Your likely schools are, there's a good chance you're going to be admitted, and the safety are you're likely to be admitted. But even at the safety level, there's never any guarantees. And sometimes it's hard I think to understand why did so-and-so get in and I didn't, but it's a process. But rely heavily, students, on your guidance counselors.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that too. Just in regards to, I know there's a lot of anxiety just around COVID and around, will schools have the same amount of space that they had last year? And do you have so many students deferring that, by the time I apply, is the acceptance rate going to be skewed? And I just want to be very, honest and transparent. For the most part, schools are kind of still operating the way they have been. We are reviewing applications. We're very understanding of the circumstance. As many students that we had defer typically, also some took leave of absences. So there are still plenty of seats at many of our institutions. So I definitely don't want students to stress and feel like, acceptance rates are going to change wildly this year and next year, because that's certainly not the case for the most part across the board.
I think, Abby, you want to go first?
Oh,
Okay. I would just jump in and say I certainly concur with that. We get that. We've been getting that question a lot. Like, is it going to be so much more competitive? And because of different, enrollment data scientists and things that are above my pay grade. It's not. We have, plenty of room, and at least from our standpoint at UVM, it's going to be a very similar process. And I think it's important to note that the new question on the Common Application, if you plan to use Common Application to apply, there is a space to provide more information if you felt like COVID altered something that you want to give context to. But I think knowing that the committee reading your application this year and next year and the following year, we all have this context in mind and can see it very clearly.
All right. So I would just, check in now. Presenters, you've done a beautiful job. Thank you. Our gratitude for spending so much time today. Was there any kind of last questions or comments as you listen to one another speak that anybody wanted to speak to? Yeah, go ahead.
So for me, with searching for schools this year, it might actually be a lot more beneficial for students. It's, as we talk with houses, I think it's a buyer's market at this point. You're going to be talking to a lot more schools than before because they have more access to talk to students virtually. They're setting up virtual meetings, they're having info sessions, you're going on virtual tours. It's not the same, obviously, as going to the campus, but, even today, you're talking to schools that you probably might not have seen before. So, take advantage of this. This is probably a weirdly once in a lifetime thing. So do your best, because I know if I was your age and I was still looking at colleges, like I wish this happened. It was hard enough to get out to go see schools and, were there fly-in trips available? Now where it's like, you don't have to fly in anywhere because those schools are coming to you at your school on whatever virtual platform there is to offer. I highly, highly suggest going to meet with schools that you've probably never heard of before because you can find out something wonderful.
It looks like we do have one more question.
There's another comment in this. Oh, sorry guys. I think my connection's a little wonky, so I'm a little behind you all. My apologies. So there is another question. If folks see that, any idea what the SAT, ACT testing will be next year? My child is a junior.
Personally, I would say don't let it stress you out at this point in time. It's been very humbling to see how many colleges and universities have moved to test optional practice. That's not 100% across the board, but the numbers are extremely, extremely high. In cases that they haven't, a few schools in Florida, state schools, are still working, but a lot of it is board of directors that are kind of making those final decisions. But for the most part, I think you can just rest easy in knowing that we have your best interest in mind. We're not trying to put any students in an unsafe testing situation. We don't want you flying across the country to try to get a test date. And we're going to do what's best as we have that information. I think, my institution has always been very test optional. So we're pretty inclined to, know how to review applications, but I do think this cycle will be really nice for other schools that are kind of making this change for the first time. They're going to have a real different holistic review that maybe they didn't have before. So I'm hoping that some of those changes stick around. But overall, I wouldn't stress about it. Things will change as they change. And if testing becomes a thing again, schools will make their own decision. But I think in good faith, most universities that you'll be applying to are going to be understanding of the circumstances.
All right, and we do have another comment in, so jump in, folks. Are your schools in person or remote this year, and how's it going? For those of us with kids who are juniors, we're assuming all schools will be in person in 2 years, but
our school, our students are on campus. They're all in dorms. Typically at Skidmore, first-year students could be in a double or a triple. We have no triples this year. And to accommodate that, some of our upperclassmen are living in some local hotels. However, lucky them. But we've been doing very well. Our students have been incredibly responsible. They're in a hybrid of classes. Some of their classes are online, some are in the classroom. And we are all tested weekly, and I will tell you that everybody has a really good attitude, and so far so good. So it's hard to know what we're going to be doing, but we are planning to be back the same format next semester.
At Landmark, we are in a really fortunate situation. We only have 450 students. We are small in a very intentional way because it's very personal education. And Vermont is one of the safest states in the country. So we are able to have students in class. We are testing regularly. We brought students onto campus from all over the country with stringent safety procedures in place. And we've done really, really well. I think if anyone can continue to have in-person classes, given the low density of our population, I think we'll be able to continue. But right now it's been going really well in person, and the students are really glad to be back on campus.
So unfortunately, we have about 18,000 students that attend our school. So being in person just wouldn't have worked this year. So we are majority remote. We have about probably 200 classes in session in person right now for students that needed to complete labs to graduate. And the majority of students that we have currently living on campus are because they had need to live on campus. So either international students or students without homes, et cetera, or just needing to get out of their homes. So it's actually going really well. We've only had 2 cases total, which I was surprised by. And, we're doing extensive contact tracing, testing regularly, and which is really helpful because with our lab sciences, we know that we're part of the process of looking for, this cure for COVID.
At Merrimack, we give students the option to choose what worked best for them in their own educational journey, their own safety. So we did have about 70% of our students elect to return to campus, which was great. So we are able to give them that in-person experience, both living and in the classroom. We do biweekly testing. We use the MIT Broad Institute. So testing is certainly underway. We have really robust contact tracing. So if there were to be a small outbreak, which we did deal with at one point in the year, it was very easy to isolate, contact trace, and continue to make the campus safe. So that is something that was important to our students. I just think one thing to know is that things just look a little bit different when we're in person this year. Obviously, social distancing, safety protocols, mask wearing, events are more spread out, a lot of things happening outside, a lot of new tents, a lot of new eating options, really just spacing out students. We ordered 50 new fire pits that are kind of all spread around campus. So still giving students that interaction, but just knowing that this is a little bit of a new normal now, maybe until there is a vaccine, but that we are still giving students that kind of in-person experience that many of them wanted. We also do all of our courses now in multimodality. So what that means is if it's an in-person class, you can still take it virtually. So you could take a week off if you're sick, if you're visiting family, if you're an athlete and you're traveling. So that's actually really lends itself nicely to kind of the future of having these multi-instructional options where students can either be in person or they can still not miss anything and kind of live stream right in and join into the classroom.
Sure, and I'll just give a quick update about University of Vermont. We similarly had, a UVM strong committee with a, come back with this plan to bring students back on campus. Every student got the option to be completely at home or on campus, and 85% of our student body chose to come back. They get tested every week. We just got an update that since August, 0.05% of our student and faculty and staff have tested positive. So it's really low. And we're really fortunate to be in Vermont, and we're really fortunate to have the students we have, which it's fun to get updates from all these schools, because I think overall, a lot of these colleges just blown away by, college age students wanting to be on campus and understanding what they need to do to stay there and be in person. We just got an update today of just different things that happened last week on campus. And in all the photos, students are masked, but interacting. We have students at our Cream Dairy Barn, which is a fully student-run dairy barn. We had students out in the Centennial Woods, which is our environmental science labs right by campus. We had the white coat ceremony for UVM Medical Center. And it truly almost brought me to tears, because if you had told me this in July, this is what it was going to look like, and students were going to do the thing and come back, and it's going to work. I was nervous. So it's really wonderful to see. And we're glad that students can still get these community and learning opportunities on campus right now. And yes, like the question said, hopefully in 2 years, who knows? So who knows?
So I just wanted to respond. There was someone in the comment section just asking, so this is being recorded. So if you've jumped onto this session late, all of the sessions that are happening today are being recorded and will be available on the ARPS YouTube channel for later viewing. So we'll be able to watch that when we're done. I think it takes just a little bit of time after we're done recording. I do see one final question. I have to wonder if it was maybe directed at one of the presenters, maybe something you had said. So if anybody wants to take this, how do you determine the number of students in each class? If the faculty-student ratio is the same for different schools, that doesn't mean that the classes you take will be the same size, right?
I think that's confusion from what I had said earlier about sometimes the student to faculty ratio starts to look the same on different pamphlets. And, it is different, and it's important to look at that ratio for each school, but understand, at each school it's going to be different. Like, for example, I don't want to speak to, like, I'm guessing at Landmark, there's much smaller class sizes than typically at UVM. But at UVM, you're going to have some classes that might be lecture format, which would be 200 students. But then you might have, 4 classes that semester that will be 15 students. So I guess that was kind of confusing, but I hope that clears that up. I guess that just means, if it's a larger institution, I think students sometimes write it off as in I'll never have any faculty connections or small class sizes, or I won't even have a small class until I'm a senior, which I know a lot of schools work to make sure that's not the case. For example, I'll give an example of UVM. We have a teacher advisor program. So your first semester as a student here, one of your classes will be capped at 15 students. And the faculty member teaching that class will also be your first faculty advisor. So you might go on to switch majors and switch faculty advisors later on, but right away you have that kind of faculty-student interaction. That faculty is your advisor, they know about you, and they can kind of help advise right away. So I guess that's sort of what I meant about the student-faculty ratio. And please, anyone else, feel free to clarify.
I think I would add to that at Skidmore, for example, we're a small liberal arts school. Our ratio of students to faculty is 8-1. That doesn't mean that the largest classes are 8-1 faculty. That's just the overall average of the total number of students, 2,500, and the denominator being the number of faculty we have.
Just to jump in with a little bit about Landmark, which is a very different situation, really, than some of these other schools. Our student to faculty ratio isn't that much different than yours, Dale. It's 6-1. But class sizes are intentionally really small. The average class size has always been 8 to 12 students, and there aren't any lecture classes on our campus. It's just in the nature of what we do to teach in that kind of a personal, very hands-on way.
So I think, folks, unless I see any final kind of questions or comments come through, I am grateful for the expertise in the room, for sharing of your time today so generously. Grateful that other students who maybe jumped onto other sessions will be able to review this after it's done. So if there's any closing remarks, please take the floor now. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time today.
As someone once said to me a long time ago, when you have these aspirant colleges and you think, oh, I'd love to go to this particular school, I'm not sure. And you read all the data and it's like, well, I might get in. You don't get in somewhere you don't apply to. So, go for it as well.
Great, thanks everyone for having us. One thing I would say is utilize us as admission counselors. Every school has folks that work with students from a certain area. So any of those questions you're not finding on the website or from your virtual visits, utilize us as resources. We're here to help you. We're not scary admission officers. We are here to help students, on their journey, and we want to find students that will be good fits at our institution. So have those conversations, certainly.
All right. Hey, thank you all today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you for everybody watching, and have a good afternoon all.
Thank you.
Bye.